Should I still file my lien if I've been promised payment? In short, yes. And here's why. A promise of a payment will not extend your lien timelines, right? So you got to send your notice out within 60 days of work being done. They promised you work within 70 days, right? Just assume that they know your 60-day deadline. So say, yes, I look forward to you paying me, but I got to take this step to complete my lien. And when you pay me, I'll just file a release. It's fine, right? Guys, this is Karalynn, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about all things liens and some frequently asked questions I get about mechanics liens, also known as contractors liens. So today, specifically, we're going to cover what a lien is and how does it work. Should I still file a lien if I've been promised payment? Will filing a lien stop the project? And what does it mean if someone bonds around my lien? Okay, so let's get started. What is a lien? All right. So who can file a lien? Anyone who supplies labor and material to improve a project can file a lien against that project, right? You can't file a lien if you only loaned money, right? So a mechanic's lien, a contractor liens only work for the value of the labor and material you actually provided. So you can't lien for more work than you did. Like you can't lien until you've actually done the work, right? So what a lien is at its core is a security interest in the property. And how I like to break this down is the difference between secured and unsecured debt, right? So say you go to Home Depot, you get a credit card, you charge up a bunch of stuff and you don't pay it, right? That's an unsecured debt. Home Depot's now going to take you to court, sue you, get a judgment, and then find assets to collect on, bank accounts, property, whatever. What a security interest is that the money you give or the money you give is secured by the property. So for instance, a mortgage. When you go to buy a house and you take out a loan, the bank gives you a money, but they take back a security interest on the property. Meaning if you don't pay the mortgage, they don't have to go look for assets. They can just foreclose, kick you out of the property and take it back. Mechanics lien works the same way. At the end of the day, you file a lien, you don't get paid. Your end result is to force the sale of the property to give you the money that you're owed, right? Now, 99% of lien cases don't actually end up in the lien foreclosure, actually being foreclosed. You get paid somewhere along the line. But that is the end result. So meaning that the work that you've done is now secured by the property. So like in a situation where you're hired by a general contractor and you file a lien, you have your lien case, which would be enforcement by suing the owner to enforce that lien, but you also still have your breach of contract claim against the general contractor, which is very similar to the Home Depot credit card, right? You got to sue the general contractor, you got to get a judgment, and then you have to find assets. As opposed to you sue the owner to enforce the lien, the asset is the property, right? So a lien is a very extreme remedy because it's an involuntary lien. They're not giving you permission to file a lien like a bank mortgage is, like you sign off giving somebody that. You're taking it voluntarily, meaning you're involuntarily taking an interest on somebody's property that you might not even have a contract with, or you might not even know who they are. So there's very specific rules about how to file a lien. So it also, a lien will protect you. Like say in that example, you're hired by a general contractor and you have a lien. If the general contractor filed bankruptcy, you still have your lien claim against the owner. Meaning you can still sue to enforce your lien and get paid, right? So a lien is extra security, gives you an extra, really secures the debt. There's not many other industries besides banking that gives you this type of security. The history of liens. So liens have been around as long as the United States, right? Liens were originally started by Benjamin Franklin, who were trying to get people to help build the Capitol building. And nobody wanted to come work for a broke government. Sounds very familiar. But what they did is said, okay, if we can't afford to pay you, if we go bankrupt, you can have an interest in this property, which we'll sell to pay you, right? And so liens have been around as long as we have. And actually, that came even more from the common law in England way before we were even founded. So the idea behind liens is historic and been around. But here's the thing. you have to do them exactly as they're required because it's such a strong remedy, a security interest in somebody's property that you're taking basically involuntarily. So, and every state does that a little different. And so you have to send timely notices. Certain things have to be in those notice. You have to timely file the lien. Certain things have to be in the lien where the lien needs to be filed, and the notice of lien that needs to be sent out. So there's very specific steps that vary by state. Literally, there's 50 different ways to do a lien. Just depends on what state you're in, right? And so knowing what those timelines are on the front end so you don't miss your deadlines, right? Because you want that security interest because that really is your ticket to getting paid on time, right? And so you send the timely notice, you file your lien. So what happens after a lien is filed? So you, generally speaking, in probably 75% of the case, filing a lien is enough to get you paid because owners don't like liens. It stops things from foreclosing or stops property from selling or refinancing. So they will most likely take care of your lien, but either before the project is done or shortly thereafter. Now, if you don't, then you have to file that lawsuit to enforce your lien, right? And what does that look like? So liens expire, right? On the long end, most states have a year. Some states, I think like California, is like 90 days. You have to file suit to enforce it. So your lien is good for a year as long as you filed your lawsuit to enforce the lien within the year that you filed it. Then you're good to go, right? And so they do have a timeline. They don't last forever. And so, pros and cons. If you're owed $10,000, it might not be worth filing a lawsuit because you have to pay litigation costs and all that up front. You are entitled to get it back in most states, but it is an upfront cost. So there's really got to be a discussion about how much is the lien if we want to move forward on it. And it might be worth letting it sit for a while to see if it gets paid. And then usually by the situation, we can take a look at what's going on. Like if it's a project and construction financing, they're probably going to pay the lien because they have to go to permanent financing. If it's like an apartment complex that doesn't have any of those things, they're probably not going to pay the lien. And you're going to have to sue them. So really just depends upon the conversation, but about the type of situation. But it's number one, knowing how to do it properly and knowing what a strong remedy it is hugely helpful, especially for somebody in the construction industry where like 90% of contractors never get paid on time. It's kind of an industry standard. But those that do get paid on time, send their lien notices, file their liens, and that will ensure prompt payment. Okay. So the second question, should I still file my lien if I've been promised payment? In short, yes. And here's why. A promise of a payment will not extend your lien timelines, right? So you got to send your notice out within 60 days of work being done. They promised you work within 70 days, right? Just assume that they know your 60-day deadline. So say, yes, I look forward to you paying me, but I got to take this step to complete my lien. And when you pay me, I'll just file a release. It's fine, right? So don't let anyone promise you a payment to push you outside your lien timelines, right? Because if you missed your lien, you still have a cause of action, but it's against whoever hired you, and it's an unsecured debt, which then you have to sue and get a judgment. It's a much harder case, right? And so the stats are that only 12% of construction companies get paid on time. It's pretty crazy, right? But I guarantee you those 12% are using their lien rights to their advantage, right? The squeaky wheel gets paid first. So you want to send your notices. And here's the thing about liens. Yes, there's all these timelines and deadlines. There's no punishment for sending it early. You only get punished or miss the deadline if you send it late. So as soon as you know that there's a payment issue, send the notice, file the lien. Don't wait. It's your money. It's your company's money. People are relying on you to bring that money in, right? So don't wait to file your lien on promise of payment. If say I'll give you a lien release when you pay me. I can't risk my money with your promise, unfortunately. All right, another question I get frequently is, will filing a lien stop the project? Short answer, no. A lien is a great remedy, but it's not going to stop actual construction, right? A lien has to be cleaned up or dealt with before a refinance, before construction financing goes to permanent financing, or before a sale. So there is lots of leverage in a lien, but it's not going to stop the project. And the sooner you send notice to the people, like the owner, the more likely it is you're going to get paid, right? So what happens is, like, if the owner pays the general and the general doesn't pay the subs or doesn't pay the material suppliers, they might end up having to pay twice, right? They paid the GC, he didn't pay them. They still have to file a lien. You still file a lien, but now the owner's got to pay twice, right? So the sooner you send your notice and prevent that owner from having to pay twice, the faster you are to get paid. Because if the GC hasn't paid you and they still have their funds, they will pay you out of those funds, right? And it's not going to cost as much because they're not paying twice. So the sooner you send your notice, the more likely you are to get paid. It will not stop the project. It will stop it from going to permanent financing and things like that. But it's not going to stop the project. It's not going to stop ongoing construction. So, and the last question that I get that happens a lot too is, what does it mean if somebody bonds around my lien? Right? So you've taken the steps, you've timely filed your lien, and then you get this thick letter in your office from the county clerk of wherever the lien is filed. And it says, bond to indemnify lien. And what that means is that somebody's gone to the bond company, the insurance company, and either put up the cash or put up some kind of security to cover the costs of your lien. And the bond company files it of record and says, hey, I have the money to pay this lien. It's still here, but it's not going to prevent a sale. It's not going to prevent a refinance. It's not going to prevent them from going to construction financing, permanent financing. And so you usually see this when they either disagree with the amount of the lien that you're owed, or they disagree that it was filed timely. And another way to get around a lien besides paying it is bonding it, right? And so your lien is still there. The money you're owed is being pledged by the bond company. But what it means is the bond company is saying, yes, I'll pay you the money you're owed once you prove to me your lien is valid. So your lien's not, once it's been bonded, your lien's not going to get paid unless you file a lawsuit against the bonding company and be like, hey, here's my lien's valid. Here's all my paperwork. I did everything right. I'm owed this money. And then either the person who put up the bond or the bonding company will pay you. So you will still get paid, because the bond company is basically insurance saying, hey, I'm here to pay you when you prove to me that you're owed, but now you have to take the next step and file suit. So, but even if the bond is filed, your lien is still on the same deadline, right? It's still good for a year. If you don't file a lawsuit on the bond within that year, then your lien will expire, the bond will go away, and the person will get their money back to put up the money for the bond, right? So, yes, your lien is still good. It's still there. But the owner can now go to closing, can now refinance or move forward, and you have to take the additional step of suing the bond company to collect the money you're owed. So I hope these were helpful. If you have other questions about bonds, please let me know. Also, if you want more free legal advice, please sign up for our newsletter, Construction Legal Made Easy. It's in the show notes, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.